All right, well, I'm so glad that everyone is here. This is a great turnout. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before I dive in to talk about my practice, I just want to thank Open Air, Stony, and the crew for everything that you do to support me and my practice and the other artists in our practices collectively. And just let you all know that I'm from North Carolina, and I own my home, and my studio is in the basement of my home. And so I work mostly in isolation. And so this experience has been really great for me because I get to interface with other artists at home, and I get to come to the makerspace here and work in this incredible building and interface with other people and library folks who like to come and talk about my designs. And it's just been a wonderful experience just to bounce ideas around. Just recently, I had my studio visit from the Open Air crew, and some of their feedback really got me thinking about my designs differently. And some of the things that are on the table in front of you are literally were made in response to that feedback. So it's just been a really great experience. So thank you so much. And as Stoney mentioned, the samples that are on the table are everything that's in front of you are things that I have made since I've been here. Feel free to touch, just with the acrylic in particular, just be gentle with it. I'll tell you all about all the things that I'm working on. Great. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, starting out as a whole, how I moved from being a full-time architect to a sculptural artist, which Rachel gave a brief overview of, but which I'll go into in more detail. And the thing that I want to point out is that I'll be talking about the iterative process throughout this presentation, both in terms of creating multiple design iterations again and again, but also iterating on improving myself, my health, but also finding business iterations. Like I do something one way, and then I learn to do it another way, and leading down these paths of finding ways to creatively make a life for myself where I can support myself through my craft. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Minnesota, born there, raised in Wisconsin, moved back to Minnesota. I attended St. Ben, St. John's University for my undergraduate degree. I studied political science. And then I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina in 2013, where I got my master's degree in architecture. And shortly after that, I moved to Durham, North Carolina, and I began working at a very reputable local architecture firm where during that time I bought a house and I was working on my licensing for my architecture credentials, and I was biking to and from work every day. I was playing intramural soccer. I was just having this thriving social life as a 28-year-old something. And one day I was driving down the street from my home, it's about a mile away. I was driving to an intramural soccer match, and I was going straight through an intersection on a green light, and a car coming the opposite way just took a left-handed turn and failed to yield, and they just hit me head on, and we were both going about 35 miles an hour. I slammed my head into the steering wheel, which shouldn't have happened because my airbag was defective, as it turns out, and I suffered what is called a subdural hematoma, or internal brain bleed. And the next slide is going to be a slide of the car, just like a little heads up. And an image of my brain. So my brain is in the bottom right here. The blood that pooled in my brain after the injury is shown in the light gray here. And of course, this was totally devastating. I don't even think I realized how devastating it was for me at the time that it happened. But of course, I thought that I was going to be returning to my career in architecture after my 2-week paid, time off leave that I had left banked, and then that would be it. I would be back to my life. But that is not how it went. And I found myself plunged into disability as a 28-year-old, and dealing with a lot of uncertainty around my career, what was in front of me. A lot of anxiety around my potential, like what my full recovery might look like or not look like, because there was a lot of uncertainty around that at the time with the doctors. And then also dealing with having a lot of student debt as well. I just went and invested a ton of money into myself and my education, and now I wasn't even sure about what my capacity was to perform the skill set that I had invested so heavily in. And I was dealing with issues which ranged from having issues with balance. I had weakness on my right side. My speech was slower. And I repeated myself a lot, which no one really told me until multiple months in. And I was like, why didn't you tell me I was repeating myself? But you know, I'm laughing about it now, but in all seriousness, this was like the worst time of my life. And I was really struggling to take care of myself. I was hyper independent, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And when this happened to me, it was like I needed the help, and I didn't know how to ask for it. And it put me in a really difficult spot. And I wasn't able to bounce back like I thought I would be able to. One of the biggest things that I was struggling with was overstimulation. So simple things like going to the grocery store and choosing the item that I wanted to choose out of the options there, and just dealing with having 23 different options, and they're all bright and colorful, and I'm having trouble reading without my vision blurring, so I can't see what's all in it, and those types of things were just really overwhelming and difficult for me. And so I'm sort of in this really difficult spot, trying to pull myself out of disability, struggling a lot, and then COVID hits, and everyone goes into isolation. I also later found out that I had a mold problem in my home that I owned, and was trying to recover from brain injury in mold, which is not very effective, as it turns out. And so I had this massive healing journey ahead of me. And the thing that really got me going onto it was, grieving the loss of what I thought my life was going to be, and saying, I need to close that chapter. That's not for me anymore. I'm not going backward. I'm finding a new route forward. And really sitting with that loss and just saying that I can't go back to doing architectural work. I need to find a different way forward. Unfortunately, I can't do the extended reading or the extended screen time that I need to be able to do this career anymore. That's over. What's next for me? And then really paying attention to deep within myself and finding that there was just a little voice that kept saying, you're still a creative person. You can create things. You can create a new life for yourself, and you can create art around what you do. And I wouldn't even say that at that time it was art in my mind. It was like, explore design. That's what you did in grad school. You can still do that. So I went to the basement of my home, where my studio still is, and I created a sketch for an idea, and then I created a model based on that sketch. And this is the sketch on the right. Very, very simple, just some different modular pieces of different sizes using paper. And what I did was I got into the 3D modeling software that I am accustomed to and already was very proficient using, called SketchUp. It's what I've created all the designs that you see here and what you will see throughout this presentation with. And I found that I had about 10 to 15 minutes of time where I could focus on the computer without starting to feel hot, nauseous, overwhelmed, like my vision is blurring. And so I utilized that 10 to 15 minutes, got in the program, and I made modular shapes. In this case, a single module that I was able to just scale to 3 different sizes. And I was able to unfold those shapes in 3-dimensional space in the computer, and then I was able to print them out, and then I was able to cut them by hand and assemble them. And so that's what you see here. What I found was that if I was able to get off the computer quickly, I was able to assemble these shapes by hand. That was much less taxing for my nervous system, and the repetitive act of doing something over and over again was boosting my serotonin and making me feel good. So these are all good things that were happening for me. So I put out these shapes, and I hit it with a moving light, and something really interesting happened, which I was like, wow, this is great. So I posted it on my Instagram account, and I wasn't the only one that thought it was great. A bunch of people responded and said, whoa, where have you been? What is this? This is totally new. I really like it. Can you make some more? And I said, well, sure, yeah, I'll make some more. But I'm not going to do it the way that I did the first time, which is using the diagram that you see on the top here. Now, the diagram on the top here describes how I folded and glued this. I folded along the dash lines, and I glued along the red lines. So literally folding this up and gluing the seams. And after I made this entire piece, and probably about halfway through, I realized if I had done it like this would have been a lot quicker, where I'm folding that way and I'm gluing a single seam. And I'm just pointing this out because I'll come back to this later in the presentation. So I made another design. This was the second design I made. Hit it with a directional light, really liked the effect. And I was just sort of off to the races at that point, just exploring design, moving light over it, exploring light and shadow. Not really entirely sure what the end goal is or the motivation is here. Just know that I'm showing up for myself. I'm just doing this little thing in the way that I can do it for myself. In triangles, you'll also see these sketches again. And then our hexagons. And this group is a group of sculptures that I come back to, paper sculptures that I still have my studio and I come back to and refer to a lot in design. I call it my early study model series, because that's all it was. I was just studying form, studying light, studying shadow at that time. And this is how I was doing it. I was printing out the shapes, I was cutting them with an X-Acto blade on this self-healing mat, and I was assembling them. But then what I found was that people were interested. They were like, what is this? Is this art? What is it? So I had to really kind of figure out, like, what is it? I guess it's art. Okay, yeah, sure, it's art. It's architectural art, okay? And then I started, people, liked it, and they wanted to start commissioning me. But I realized that what I was running into is called a tolerance issue, where if I'm cutting the shape by hand and if I'm off by 1/16 of an inch, I put 16 of those pieces together and I'm off by 1 inch. And so that type of issue is something that in my architectural brain, that precision was not where I needed it to be in order for me to justify to myself to sell the work. And so, of course, that's not true, but that's what I was thinking at the time because I didn't, I was an architect, I was not an artist yet, I wouldn't say. And so I got my hands on a laser cutter, which is the primary tool that I've been using since I have been at the makerspace. And I began using the laser cutter to make much more precise cuts. And when I was able to do that and compile them, I was able to make larger pieces. And this was the first larger piece that I created. It's called Wild Geese. It's based on the poem by Mary Oliver. Does anyone else know that poem?
Read it to my brother while he died.
Okay, yeah, wonderful poem, super meaningful, refers to hearing the shrill call of the wild geese as it beckons you to your creativity and your creative self. And that's exactly what I was doing during this time, and that's exactly when that poem came to me, was when I was making this piece. And at this point, I realized, okay, there is something behind what I'm doing, of course, and this is what it is. I am capturing the visual disturbances that I experience from my traumatic brain injury through my artwork. And I'm giving people a glimpse into what it was like to experience my traumatic brain injury, and at this time, still experiencing my traumatic brain injury. Because and it still is the case, when I look at certain patterns, and especially when I'm taxed or tired still, but at this time it was happening all the time. I look at patterns, I look at brick walls, tile floors, even people's shirts sometimes that have bold patterns. The patterns will appear to swim or move on their own accord. And that's just life for me now. And it can be really disorienting for me. It can make me nauseous. I have to look away sometimes. Sometimes I'm overtaxed. I can't walk on like wood boardwalks. They just make my mind spin. But it was Wild Geese that made it real for me that this is actually what I'm doing and this is what I'm bringing to the world. So then I began producing with a mission to create artwork that would bring people inside my experience with traumatic brain injury. And that really helped me frame what I'm doing and also give my work some purpose. So these are some more designs that I created very early on in my career using only white paper. This is basic Nina printing paper, something that you can find anywhere really. It's just some pretty basic printing paper, and a laser cutter. Does anyone have any questions so far? Feel free to ask questions at any time as well. I'm happy to answer anything, and I would love for this to be also a discussion and share ideas back and forth. So, okay, great. So then I started adding color to my pieces. As you notice so far, I've only been using black and white, and that's on purpose because when I was in grad school, our professors didn't want us to use color until after we had the form and the line weights figured out for all the drawings. So it had to read as a diagram first, very clearly in black and white before we would add color to it. So that's what I was doing here. I was making everything read really clearly before adding color, and in this case I was adding pink to the side of the piece that would be in shadow if the sun were sun were hitting it from the opposite direction. So if the sun were over here in the upper left, this is where the shadows would be cast. And then just continuing to create pieces. Actually, this piece right here, it's called Celtic, and it was my first ever commission. All the pieces on this page are 24 by 36 inches. I believe that this first piece, okay, so imagine 24 by 36 inch piece of artwork looks like this. Can you imagine what I sold it for? Does anyone want to take a guess what I sold it for? Just curious.
$150.
That's really close, actually. It was $125 to a friend, and I was just like, well, I didn't even know it was art. I was just like, I'm just making some architectural study models. And then continuing to produce them and sell them, I sold this one for $350. I sold this one for $500, and I sold this one for $650. So slowly raising my price and building a little bit more confidence in myself that, yes, this is art. Yes, it has value, even though it's made with paper, right? I'm going to be talking a little bit about the business of what I'm doing as well, so if you have any questions in that regard, just let me know. I know there's been some requests for me to include that in this presentation, so I want to make sure I'm checking that box.
Thank you.
You got it, Carrie. Some more artworks I was making, these studying the use of color, lines. So I was actually printing the lines onto the pieces of paper before putting them together. This one is called Continuum because it's just a study of a continuous pattern of line work, using void in shadow in these two pieces, and then a combination of color and line work into this one. And then I started getting larger commissions. So this is for a piece that is in Cary, North Carolina. I think this was for the client randomly found me. He's actually the COO of Epic Games, random fun fact. But his wife really loved my work, found me at a local show, and this piece is exploring how to bring in the gold tones from their bedroom, which is at the end of that hallway, with the blue tones from the living room, which is behind me here. And so this is what's called a lenticular piece, where it changes based on the direction in which you view it. And of course, I had a million different tools I could use. I could use the shapes themselves, I could use the depths of the shapes, I could use the density, I could use the arrangement of the shapes, I could use the color that I'm adding. So there's a ton of different tools. So really this design was an act of restraint. It was really figuring out, okay, how do I make this design read well while not overdoing it and using too many of the tools in the toolkit. And then I started getting requests for architectural scale commissions. So of course, this is like a natural move for me, going from framed pieces of artwork to doing actual architectural scale work. This was a piece in an artist residency space when I did a short artist residency stint with a mentor and friend who's also an architect in North Carolina. And they do an artist residency, and this was in their accessory dwelling unit where the artist residents live. And this was a time when I was actually remediating my home from the mold. So I'd found out about the mold situation, I was remediating, I was addressing my health in that way. And during that time, she graciously put me up in her place, and she said, well, you can make some art for us if you want while you're here. So of course I made this piece. This piece is called Shell Dance, and it's exploring the concept of being able to perceive color while not actually seeing the color directly. And so you can tell that from this image, which you can kind of see the paper here below, but this is made from paperboard, and then I'm using just the natural light in the space to reflect inside the shapes so that the light hits that colored paper and then it reflects the color back out. And then, of course, at night, it takes on a completely different form, which I think is very cool, that all these pieces react very differently in the daylight to what they do at nighttime when they're hit with the directional light. And then I had a client who really, really loved this piece and wanted her own. And so I made this piece of artwork for her with a little bit of exaggeration with the not natural light on the color being shown here. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Burning question on what you kept developing.
Right, so the question is, how much of this am I doing in the computer versus how much am I in pre-planning in that way versus how much am I doing kind of on the fly and in physical form, is that right?
Yeah, what are you doing digitally? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how much are you leaning on the digital tool, and where's the interplay between crafting it with your hands?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where's the interplay between crafting it with my hands and doing the digital work for this piece and many of the other ones, and the way that I'll show you, there'll be more material on how I work currently when I need the level of precision that I need in order to make like an installation template for a piece of artwork. At this phase, I'm literally working in the computer for enough time to get the design concept down, because I'm still struggling with screen time. I'm still struggling with being able to spend that much time on the computer. So for all my paper pieces, what I do is I figure out the module in 3D space in the computer first, and then I print it out and I just move right on to the physical installation. So for instance, for this piece, I went in the computer just long enough to figure out the modules and probably create 1 or 2 iterations of the scale. And then I just went ahead and created a physical mock-up. And I didn't include the mock-ups here, but I went through 4 different mock-ups with this client and had 4 different shapes that I was showing them to say which direction do we want to move in for this project.
And so what about when you were like a kid or a young person?
Yeah, so the question is like, what was my early exposure to design, 3-dimensional software, model making, stuff like that, is that right? Yeah. So I studied political science in undergrad. And I had no idea that I was going to do architecture until I was about 20 years old. And I had never made a model until I went to grad school for architecture. So totally different background. I thought I was going to do law. I was actually pre-law for undergrad, and then I transitioned over because I took a environmental politics and policy class, and I found I was really interested in sustainability and building design. And then I was also working at the art gallery at St. Ben, St. John's at that time, and I was reinventing the spaces in the art gallery over and over again. And I really liked reinventing spaces, and I thought this would be an acceptable career path for my family, who is a bunch of doctors and lawyers, honestly. And so I thought, okay, architecture would check that box, but still allow me to be creative. It's kind of funny, right? Like I was just so like embedded in like trying to do the right, so interested in doing the right thing by my family and everything. But yeah, does that answer your question? Like very little experience with making anything tactile until I was 23 years old, beginning my master's in architecture degree.
A few things that you've shown so far just kind of remind me of.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have not, I'm aware of Escher's work. I've kind of intentionally not studied their work very extensively, mostly because when I find an artist who does work that I like or resonates with me, I try to take in some, but I also try not to make it a situation where I am absorbing a lot of things subconsciously and then later regurgitating them thinking they're my own idea. So I like to stay kind of broad and wide with that. Something we talked about a bit during my artist visit as well, or the studio visit. Yeah.
Okay, so the color, is that on one of the layers or that is light?
The color is on the backside of the paper board, and then you just can't see it here. So the light is what's reflecting in this image, so that the light that's bouncing off the back wall into the shape and then back out is what you're perceiving with the color there. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So basically at this point I'm working, I have a couple of small scale installations, and I have a client who sends me a link and says, here's an artist database for artists with disabilities. I think you'd be a great fit for them. Maybe you should sign up. And at this point I hadn't really claimed my status as being a disabled person working in art, and so I just kind of thought, whatever, like maybe I'll do it. And I ultimately did get around to it, and I did it, and I'm so glad that I did, because I was discovered by a national art agency called Art Lifting, who works exclusively with artists who've been impacted by disabilities, and it's been the single most life-changing business contact that I've made in my career so far. And about 6 months after signing a contract with them to work with them, not exclusively, they brought me a huge project, which is the one I'm going to show you next, and it's 2 pieces in a development in Colorado Springs, and the total value of those pieces was $75,000 that they sold it for. Now that I only got a portion of that profit, or the portion of that money, but the fact that I can put a $75,000 project in my portfolio at this point is just completely life-changing for me. And this is that project. So this is a piece that's called The Journey. The client said, we want a piece inspired by a journey to Pikes Peak. That's all. Here's the space, make us something. Okay, so I came up with this concept of using the idea of compression to release in order to make this happen. And in fact, I describe this design process in my, this is a lookbook that I'm currently editing right now for production for a trade show that I'm going to in June. But I actually have the entire breakdown of this piece in the lookbook. So I'm just gonna pass this around so you can take a look at it. The idea is to take the concept of compression to release, where you're getting ready for a journey, you're getting ready for a trip, and there's all this like stress, and you're trying to figure out what to do, all the packing, getting the dog care, all that stuff. And then once you get onto the journey and get onto the vacation, you release this, you go from compression to release and hit this flow state. And so I'm representing the compression using this tree bark pattern, and I'm representing the release with the mountainscape for this piece. And this is, when you look the opposite direction here, you can see Pikes Peak from outside the window. And I can't remember the name of this. I just said it earlier. Anyway, there's another park in front of it that you can see as well. Does anyone remember what that's called? Devil's? Garden of the Gods, that's what it is. Garden of the Gods, yes. So this is Garden of the Gods and Pikes Peak. And then upstairs, the second piece, I took little snapshots of this, and I said, okay, if you're going on a journey, and later you're recalling the journey, you remember these little clips or these little moments from the journey. And so I took those and I created these sculptural tiles out of them, and then created this other piece of artwork for the the lounge space on the second floor, the clubhouse space on the second floor. And then my second project with Art Lifting was for this piece, which is for the client who is JRM Construction Management Company, and this is for their corporate headquarters in Manhattan. And this space has no natural light, and so we use this reflective acrylic in order to bring in and reflect lights that this piece acts almost like a secondary light source in space. And I will say that for this piece and the last two pieces, I worked with a fabrication partner for the very first time, and this piece was a total nightmare working with them, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about contracts. I learned a lot about tracking what people say, following up via email. There's a lot of business practices that I still practice today that I learned from that project because it was such a nightmare. And this one, I worked with a different fabrication partner who I still work with, and it went fabulously, and I'm very happy with my relationship with them, very grateful for that connection. And do you recognize the piece? Recognize the shapes? A little close-up of that work. And then another medium that I work in is rockite. So these shapes are cast using rockite, which is essentially a fine-grained concrete material. And I love this piece because it has a totally different look night and day. And this piece is super unique because these individual art pieces actually live around a TV screen that has the image on it. So it's this composite physical and digital installation, and this is at a Marriott hotel in Washington, D.C. And the client came to me, and what they said was, we really like this artwork, this little paper study model. Can you make a large-scale installation using that concept? And so this is what I came up with for that. And then I literally yesterday, this new installation using this design was installed in the Urban Land Institute headquarters also in Washington, D.C. And so these are the photos that I got yesterday, texted from the art supervisor that oversaw the installation. So working with this company is great because I design the shapes, I design the layouts, and they oversee production, they oversee the shipment, they oversee the installation. So it makes it super easy for me to continue just with what I do best, which is design work, essentially. I don't need to be on site installing everything myself. Other people can do what they're great at, and I can continue to do what I'm good at. And so here are some shots from that installation. I think it turned out really well. What we were focusing on here was creating these cluster communities because Urban Land Institute is all about supporting local communities. And then just to show you a little bit about how I work, but this is the 3D model that I worked with the client on. So these are 5 of the 10 iterations that I came up with when I was working with them. And this is the type of thing I do on my calls with them, is where I say, oh, you like this shape? Okay, well, let me create a bunch of different iterations for you to decide between for this artwork. And and they choose one, and we go from there. I make it seem that simple, but it's probably hundreds of emails and lots of calls and figuring it out together. Another material that I work with is leather. Some of you have leather on the table in front of you.
Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, question?
I do.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit about your journey. Is that okay if I ask it?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, as an artist with a disability in this way, how did you manage this sort of progression of first starting to do a little bit and then more, and then you suddenly find yourself on an installation? I mean, were you like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Do you have to take breaks all the time? This is such an urgency culture that we're in.
Yeah.
How did you interface with it?
Yeah, it's something that I still, the question is how do I interface with dealing with, having disability or dealing with disability and building my business at the same time and scaling at a rate that feels inconsistent with my healing process, essentially. With great difficulty would be the answer. A lot of having to check in with myself, a lot of hitting a wall, being overwhelmed, needing to recoil and and essentially check in with myself, nurture myself. But what I found is essentially that as my health continues to grow and get better, it allows me to do more and more. And so it's been sort of this almost like lockstep between my health improving and my business functionality and my business growth occurring. And so one hasn't just occurred without the other. It's been a very slow progression for both of them happening at the same time. It's something that I still struggle with, to be honest, is like paying attention to my capacity and making the choice to like rest instead of answering the emails or whatever it is that needs to be done. And so, it's definitely a balancing act. It's been a long journey. Does that answer your question?
Maybe I have a follow-up. I can remember it.
Well, we got more time, so just raise your hand again then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Great.
Thank you.
And so leather being another material that I work with here. In this case, this design is leather and studs, metal studs. And there's several leather pieces on the tables in front of you. As Stoney mentioned, some of them have some soot on them. They're from being laser cut. If they don't have soot, it's because I hand cut it. Mikey, will you hold that one up? So that one doesn't have any black char around it. So that one was literally cut with an X-Acto blade, whereas the one at the table behind you is got that black soot on it. So that means, it was laser cut. These were all hand cut pieces. It's something that I'm still exploring a lot of leather, and I was able to take this piece and it sort of be one of the premier pieces of the three. I actually think people liked it the most of the three that I showed at Milan Design Week last year. So I went to Milan and showed my work at Design Week, and I was part of the showcase called Salone Satellite, and this is a designer exhibit exclusively for designers under 35 years old. So you have to apply, they let you in, and then these are designers from all over the world, and there's like 100 of us. And I have to say that out of the 100, I think there were maybe 3 from America. It turns out the Europeans don't really like Americans that much. Go figure. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, people were a little skeptical of me at first, I have to say, but like it was great. The person to my left was from Korea, person behind me from Japan, people across the way, Holland, and then I had Poland over here, and I made friends from all over the world, and it was just a really wonderful experience. Okay, this is a totally new topic I'm going to dive into. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Yes?
You mentioned SketchUp. What are you using now?
I'm still using SketchUp. SketchUp is a free software. It's what I started with. I already had it downloaded on my same computer that I still use, which was the computer I used during grad school. Thank God it's like still working. But yeah, and now I finally have it on my laptop too, because it's just worth paying for now. So yeah. Okay, we're gonna keep going. So something that I found, and I think we're doing okay on time, but I have a little bit more to go. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep moving with my thoughts here. So one of the things that I noticed about my work is that we have a lot of directionally scattered surfaces. And what I kept thinking about was my time in the architecture profession, where we would be specifying acoustic noise-reducing materials for spaces, and that we had very limited options for things that were cool and functioned well, things that looked cool and functioned well. And so with my work, I noticed that it lends itself really well to noise disbursement, because as soon as noise waves are hitting these pieces, they're flying in a million different directions. Someone even suggested once that I look into working with military aircraft carriers, because the designs on the bottom of the planes would disperse any sort of radar trying to detect them, right? Super interesting suggestion. Didn't end up following up on that, but what I did notice is that this would work really well in conjunction with noise waves. And I thought, okay, if I can get some sort of noise-reducing material paired with my artwork, I would potentially have a very viable acoustic product. And that was something that I was very interested in, was bringing this idea of accessibility through noise and reduction of noise to a broader audience. Because after my car crash in TBI, something else that I experienced beyond all the debilitating symptoms I've already shared, especially the overstimulation overwhelm and visual symptoms was that I would go downtown in my hometown in Durham, North Carolina, and it's got this wonderful brick and wood aesthetic because they're all old tobacco warehouses refurbished. But when I'm in there, I can't spend very much time there without being totally uncomfortable and feeling overstimulated. My partner Mikey here in the front row and I, we have this thing called same siding where we sit on the same side of the table so that we can talk and we can hear each other because I just get overwhelmed and it's overstimulating. And so I began exploring this concept of creating accessible artwork. So creating artwork that reduces the volume in spaces and makes them more accessible for people like me and people with other invisible disabilities. Since I began this work, a lot of people have come to me and said, thank you so much. Like, I have anxiety or I have ADHD or like my mom has just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's and we can't spend time there. That space is not for us. And so doing this work has been wonderful for me to define not only the aesthetic purpose behind what I do, which is raising awareness through the aesthetic of the work for invisible disabilities, but also addressing the functionality issues that people who have invisible disabilities face on a daily basis. And so this was my first piece of artwork that I did. I basically laser cut cardboard and then I clad it with this velvet flocking material. I thought, okay, that's all right. I want to make it bigger, so I made it bigger. I wanted to hide the backer board, so I did that. But still, I was like, I want pieces that can be individually mounted to the wall that don't rely on a backer board, so how do I make them? And of course here, I'm just totally reinventing the wheel, because I had no idea where to start. I'm like, I just think if I start making the thing, maybe like these opportunities will fall into my lap, and maybe I'll get more material. I just was like going in the direction that I wanted to go. So I made this shape, which this is called Square City, and all of these are individually mounted, but you can see that there's this seam here. So I achieved the idea of individually mounting these shapes. But the way that I did it was I laser cut the shapes, I clad it with the material, and then I closed it on itself and adhered it to itself. But because this material, this velvet flocking material, has a tensile quality to it, when I close this shape on itself, it just wants to pull itself apart again. So there's some sort of inherent design flaw there where like, I'm trying to close the shape, it wants to pull itself apart. That's not ideal. So I started thinking about this design problem a little bit differently. What I was doing was I was closing it like the diagram you see here, which is the one I wish I had done in the beginning on my first project, the diamond project. And what I figured out is that if I actually created the designs like this, where they're folding up almost like a Chinese takeout box, that maybe I'd be able to clad the material and it would be self-sustaining in the way that it's holding together. And so I laser cut these shapes, folded them up, but I didn't love these seams here. I thought if I'm cladding this with some material and it has this beveled edge to it, I don't love that. And I thought I hit a design block, but I was working at a makerspace at the time and the maker said, why don't you try crushing those seams, flipping it over and see if you can get it to work. And so that's exactly what I did. I took a pen, crushed the seams, flipped it over, and then I got this really nice seam here for the outside. And then I was able to take that concept and clad these shapes with fabric and then create this diamond dream design, which turned out super well. And this was, I think, my second, beyond the shell dance with the hidden color pieces, this is my first, I think my second full scale, actually this was before shell dance, this is my first architectural scale installation. And at this point, I'm like, this is great, cardboard and fabric is all well, but if I could get my hands on some actually noise reducing material, like that's industry standard, already used in the field, that would be great, and maybe I could actually produce a product and pitch that product. Here's another close-up of that. So my friend randomly calls me, again, do you see the, going back to the Diamond Dream? And also at this point, I just made it my logo as well. And at this point, my friend Shannon calls me. She says, yo, I'm working with this furniture maker, and they have a bunch of this leftover acoustic felt material. Could you use this for anything? And I said, oh, yeah, like, please. Like, I have been trying to manifest some acoustic material to work with for this. The only problem is that it has this grid of holes in it. So this is the material that I got. And I'm like, okay, I have to make a design that works around this grid of holes. And also is cuttable on a CNC router. Now, I've since learned that this cuts really well with what's called a drag knife, which is essentially a router, which is like a spinning drill bit that moves along, but you remove the drill bit and you put on like a box cutter knife, and it can cut it in the X and Y axis on a flat plane. But at this point, all I have is this spinning router bit. And so I come up with this design, which I really liked, works around the hole pattern. I created the paper template for it. But what I found is that all of the edges got burned from the router bit. So it didn't work for this design, but I pocketed this design for later, which you'll see in just a moment, what I decided to do with this design instead. But I did come up with this one, which works instead. So I found these two shapes, and I'm creating this screen design using it. So here's me just playing. This is in my studio in the basement of my home, assembling this together, and then this was the design that I came up with from that. So at this point, I have a bunch of experiments. I have this piece, and I'm thinking I'm getting a lot closer to creating an acoustic product. So what I do is I put these all in my studio email newsletter, and I shoot them out to my community. And I say, that's something that I love to do. I love to collect people, love to collect email newsletter peoples, which, by the way, here, I'm going to send this around in case you want to sign up for it. Which, please do. I'd love to keep in touch with you and share my new designs as I come up with them. But I share this in my email newsletter community. And someone who I met at a networking event 6 months earlier reaches back out and says, I love these acoustic explorations. You could make an amazing acoustic product if you're paired with, this company. And she introduces me to this company called Unicavev, which I had never heard of before. I don't expect anyone here to have heard of them, but they're a national acoustic product supply company. And before I know it, I'm on the call with the president of the company and their fabrication lead, and I am designing an acoustic product with them that they're going to bring to market the next year, which is just like fabulous, right? I'm like, this is amazing. Does anyone know what design licensing is? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what design licensing is then. Design licensing means that I create a design for a product, and I license that design to a company for them to use for a specific product for a specific time period. They sell that product, and then I get royalty on the sale of the product. So it's essentially like I give them permission to sell it, and then they give me a cut of the sale. So that outsources the sales completely, which is great. So for this design licensing deal, my first ever design licensing deal, I went back to basics, and I used the basic designs from my paper study series and created these three shapes: the triangle, the diamond, and the hexagon. And then this was the design rendering that we used to start to sell the product. Turned out really great. My first ever installation. Here's the renderer that created those. That was a design rendering previously. This is also design rendering. So they created this interesting little clip of video of what the product can be. And then I installed my first installation of my first ever acoustic product. So a great moment for me. And then it also got me recognition that was like mind blowing for me, where I got featured in Interior Design Magazine, which was just like amazing to me at this moment. My career, and just like coming from a background in architecture too, this was just like such a milestone moment for me. And of course I thought that, okay, now the work is just gonna come flooding in, and it turns out that's not really how it works. But I still am really proud of being featured, so it was still a major milestone for me. And I have another product with this company that we're currently in development for, which is based on Square City. So this is the design rendering for the Square City product. And then on the walls and the ceiling. And then I've also been exploring other freestanding sculptures using the same material, the acoustic, what's called PET felt. And this is a noise-reducing felt material that is made from recycled plastic bottles. And this originated as a kids kit for a design camp workshop for underprivileged youths that occurred in 2023. So I put together this kids kit, and I thought, I'm going to do something else with this design. And then last year, I was able to be invited to show work at the Cameron Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I was able to make this full scale. So this is the design using that PET acoustic felt material, creating a full scale architectural noise-reducing art installation. And these are hollow on the inside too. So all this material is the PET felt on the outside, and then the noise can travel through it and get trapped on the inside. Does anyone have any questions? Just gonna keep going. Okay. Coming up this year, I am under contract currently to create acoustic noise-reducing artwork for City Hall in Durham, North Carolina. That's the city that I live in, so another big milestone for my career. It's been huge to start to get into public artwork, and I'm currently on final design, working on the final design package, and not really hitting my deadlines while I'm on my artist residency right now. For this project, but I'm really excited about it. This design is for taking this concept of a central hive and having the walls represent different community clusters that then contribute to this central hive, which is representative of City Hall as the logistical center of the city. And then some other things that I'm excited about moving into are this design, which is called Tulips, which is created using a flat acoustic felt material. This one is actually on the table in front of, it's in a bunch of different places. Yep, Mikey's holding up the leather version of this. I created this using a flat piece and then folded the outside edges in to create this form. And then this is currently, as shown, individually mounted pieces that are on the ceiling in our home in Durham, North Carolina. And this was shown during an art party that I held last December. Love this piece. And then also I'm showing it here on a backer board. And then also, this is a sample that I made, and the reason Mikey has the leather piece is because I created this sample while I'm here at this residency as a product or a sample for a large-scale art installation that's happening in downtown Chicago, where I'm making 6 panels of this design as shown with the leather and the brown black backer board that are like 5 foot by 7 foot that are going along this hall right on Wacker Street, which is like right across the river. So we were able to stop there on our cross-country road trip from North Carolina and actually visit the space, which was pretty special. And then exploring this here, exploring the idea of is there a way, one other niche that I work in is creating donor artwork for nonprofit organizations. So finding ways to commemorate people who donate to organizations through artwork. So the piece that's here is, I think, on the table back there, but just using folded poetry in order to say, like, okay, here's how your work could, how this work could represent your donors for your nonprofit. And I created these designs as a continuous pattern where here I'm playing with the idea of, like, I don't have to have these be as individual shapes. They can all be one individual plane that then folds up in this way. And this was a big discovery that came out of meeting with the open air folks who came to my studio visit, where I was playing with all these leather patterns that are on a lot of the tables, and they're 2-dimensional leather patterns. And their feedback was, the leather patterns are great, 2-dimensional, but you're already doing this really cool 3-dimensional thing with leather. Like, maybe you could apply it to be part of that effort. And so this was the result of that, and many of these are on the table in front of you. And then kind of wrapping up here, I have a bit of an obsession with acrylics. And so this is a piece of artwork that was a piece of public artwork that was on the street in downtown Chapel Hill. And the idea is creating an iridescent cloud over people who visit the artwork. And I did this because when I was recovering from my brain injury, one of the things that really helped me was doing active visualization meditation. And one of the ones that was most impactful for me was imagining iridescence and imagining an iridescent cloud that would surround and infuse my body with healing energy, and really manifesting that healing energy for myself. And through the artwork, I'm trying to bring that healing energy and give people an experience of it through their experience with the artwork. So this was on the street for a summer, and then I also took these individual pieces off of the artwork and then sold them as holiday ornaments during the holiday season in that year, which was 2023. And what I really like about this piece is that you can't really tell where the artwork ends on a sunny day, because it reflects so much around the artwork that it's like you can see reflections over there, and so it's like, where is the scope of the artwork? Where does it end? And that's an interesting question that this piece brought to light. And this is also using iridescent acrylic, and this is for a nonprofit organization in Carborough, North Carolina, called the Arts Center. They're an arts education and advocacy program, and what this piece is a lightning bolt shape suspended from the ceiling, and then has these individual tiles that can be removed and etched with the names of the donors. So whenever anyone donates $500 to the organization, they etch their name and they can replace the tile and make it part of the overall artwork. So they have all the blanks there, and I think they had maybe half of them filled when I actually created and installed the artwork. But the design challenge was, how do you create something that you can remove and etch and then replace, and or like have pieces of a whole that then can be individually removed, modified, and then returned to the whole while not needing to take the entire installation down. And I did that by using these individual mounting points. Here's another piece using iridescent acrylic. Does anyone recognize this piece from earlier in the presentation? This was the one that I almost made into the gray felt material, and it burned it all up. And so, but it works with acrylic great. So, and this is one of the pieces I showed at Milan Design Week. And then these are the holiday ornaments. So this is the installation that was on the streets that I just showed you. And then this is my holiday ornament from 2 years ago. And then, I mean, this installation did so well selling, I just sold them out, that I just decided to keep going with iridescent acrylic for the holiday ornaments. So this was 2 years ago, and then last year's ornament. And then a little bit of what I'm doing right now. So some of these are on the tables in front of you. And of course, I'm still obsessed with iridescent acrylic. And so I decided to create a design challenge for myself, which was creating shapes made out of iridescent acrylic that are fully enclosed, that don't use any wire, they don't use any glue, they don't use any fasteners, mechanical fasteners of any kind. I'm literally working to figure out how to, and I have figured out for my first project here, how to fasten the pieces to themselves using only the material itself. Only laser cutting, only the material itself. So I was able to create and design, engineer this, this fastening mechanism that encloses the shapes, encloses them fully to themselves, and then also encloses them, or it also connects them to their neighbors. So there's 5 different shapes that are around here. There's a single, a double, a triple, and a 5 top of the different shapes. And then also this one in front of you is a lampshade concept. So if you want to hold that up for everyone to see, just playing around with more acrylic. This is a little clip of my desk down there. Good times down there. Come and visit me if you'd like. Something else I wanted to mention is that I actually, for this project, I laid out my entire design process, start to finish, and I pinned it all up, well actually suction cupped it all up on the outside of the makerspace down there, and I wrote with Expo marker my whole design thinking behind, here's where I started, here was the initial idea, I joined it with wire, well I don't want to join it with wire, how can I find a mechanism that mechanically fastens this to itself using only the material, and then walks through all the different steps. So I encourage you to take a look at that on your way out whenever you do leave today. It's interesting, and also I guess it's part of the exhibit, but I'll ask here, does anyone want to take a guess how many different files I had to create in order to get to the final design? Like, what's the number of files? A number of times I clicked save on this project. Like, like I call it pentaprism. Pentaprism 1, pentaprism blank was the final one. Does anyone want to take a guess what number that was? 25? Who else? 50?
83.
83?
87.
87. I feel like I'm like actioning something right now. What was that?
1 million.
1 million. It was actually 37. Yeah, good times. Anyway, I'll just say that, kind of back to your question here in the front row, like, why do I, how did I come to do this in lockstep with my healing and creating a business? And I think the biggest thing is that just to keep in mind that the career and everything I do in my art is to support the life that I want to live and the people I love and the things that I love to do. So here's just a little bit of clips of my life. My cat recently passed away, but was with me for 14 years, Eleanor. And then I just want to give also a massive shout out to my partner. I'm sorry I did my cat first, Mikey, but massive shout out to you. I just love my cat, I'm sorry. But yeah, massive shout out to Mikey in the front row here for being a wonderful support of me and my business. And it was one of the things that I had said when we first started dating is I was looking for someone to help support my art, and he has taken that so seriously and just has been so supportive of me, cooking me meals and driving me here from North Carolina to do this artist residency. So thank you so much to you. I love you. And also in here are our 3 little pups. This is Nitro, Turbo, and Weaver, the street rescue dog. And then this is my soccer community in North Carolina. I love my soccer crew. We play every Sunday morning and otherwise, and have a just wonderful time. Great group. We call it Speed of Friendship Soccer, where no injuries, no slide tackling, fun only, good vibes only. And then massive shout out also to my studio manager, Marissa, over here, who has been just helping me so much behind the scenes, just keeping business going while I've been here at this artist residency. So that's everything. Thank you for your attention. One other thing I did want to mention is that I actually operate under an artist name. So Eliza Redmann is my artist name. And I wanted to just touch on that, one, because it's been really confusing because my given name is actually Carrie. and there's a Carrie here. And so when anyone says Carrie, I'm like confused. So I just want to like air that out. That like yeah. But also, you know, the reason I took an artist name is not really what I think. It's kind of a unique story, and it's because as I began working and creating these sculptures for myself and reinventing my life and my career, I was being very closely watched by my disability insurance company from my architecture firm that I worked for. So I was on a disability policy for 2 years after my car crash. At the end of those 2 years, I was still not out of the woods by any means, but I was able to do art like maybe 5-10 hours a week and able to produce these, you know, small paper sculptures. But I found that if I was posting those online, that they would use that as evidence to discount my claim and say, you're not disabled, you can go back to work, you can, you know, you don't need the disability benefit because you can be a grocer, or you can go, I think that their actual denial was like, here's a job where you could fold towels, and that's enough reason for us to say like, you're not disabled anymore. And so that's what I was up against, and they actually hired a private investigator to follow me around to try to discount my claim during this time. So super paranoid, difficult time for me. And so part of how I protected my art was I took an artist name, and the artist name I chose was Eliza Redmann. Redman is my mother's maiden name, and Eliza is a chosen name that I chose after a number of people, but namely my therapist, whose name is Elizabeth. So yeah, anyway, just throwing that out there. Any other questions? Y'all have been such an attentive audience, so thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.